It was past midnight at the hospital, yet the halls were far from empty. The soft hum of machines, the occasional beep of monitors, and the low murmurs of tired staff filled the air. Outside, the city slept, unaware of the quiet battles taking place inside. Among the shifting shadows and bright lights, a man named Rohan moved silently, pushing a small cleaning cart. His uniform was dark and simple, marked only with a name tag that most people barely glanced at. To anyone who saw him, he was just another night janitor, another face in the background of the hospital's long, endless nights. Rohan had worked this way for years. He arrived after the evening shift ended and stayed until the early morning. Floors needed scrubbing, trash needed emptying, and supplies had to be restocked. It was tiring work, yes, but there was a rhythm to it, a quiet satisfaction in keeping things clean, organized, and safe for others. But the hospital knew only the surface of Rohan. Few could imagine that beneath the dark uniform and the quiet demeanor, he was one of the hospital's finest surgeons. By day, he performed complicated surgeries with steady hands and calm focus, saving lives that seemed impossible to save. By night, he became invisible, blending into the corridors, observing, learning, and quietly supporting the staff who carried the hospital on their tired shoulders. Tonight, Rohan moved past the emergency wing, where nurses whispered updates about patients and residents hurried from room to room, carrying charts and carrying tension in equal measure. He noticed a young nurse fumbling with an IV bag, her hands shaking just a little from exhaustion. Rohan's heart ached. He remembered the first nights he had worked alone as a resident, the uncertainty, the fear, the pressure of life and death decisions. He offered no advice, no correction, just a small, encouraging nod as he passed. No one noticed him, and that was exactly how he liked it. Being unseen allowed him to observe without pressure. It allowed him to notice mistakes that others might miss, small signs of danger that could become emergencies if left unchecked. As he wheeled his cart near the ICU, the soft cry of a monitor caught his attention. A patient's heart rate was rising, a subtle warning that could easily be missed in the chaos of night shift fatigue. Rohan paused, leaning slightly on his cart, eyes narrowing as he watched the staff respond. They moved quickly, calm but tense, checking monitors, adjusting medications, and whispering to each other in urgent tones. Rohan felt a pang of pride. They were learning, adapting, growing stronger with each night. And though he could step in, he chose not to. Not tonight. Tonight was for observation, for understanding, for being present without changing the outcome. He had learned long ago that sometimes watching quietly could teach as much as acting boldly. He remembered a young patient he had operated on months ago, a boy who had been too weak to survive a serious accident. Rohan's hands had been steady then, his mind focused on the tiny heart fighting to stay alive. He had saved that boy, and now, seeing the young nurse fumbling with her IV bag, he felt a quiet connection to the cycle of care, the chain of responsibility that kept life going within the hospital walls. The hall was quiet again, save for the low hum of machines and the distant footsteps of staff. Rohan pushed his cart slowly, taking care not to disturb anyone. He passed the cafeteria, where the night staff had left untouched trays of food, too tired to eat. He thought briefly of his own day shift, the endless surgeries, the brief coffee breaks, and the hurried conversations with colleagues. And then he thought of nights like this, quiet, unnoticed, yet profoundly important in ways no one could measure. Rohan paused outside a patient's room, listening to the steady breathing inside. The man inside had been admitted for surgery earlier in the evening and was now recovering, unconscious but stable. Rohan smiled faintly. Every life mattered. Every small detail mattered. And though he wore a janitor's uniform, he carried the responsibility of every heartbeat in his mind, the same as he did in the operating room. He moved on, checking supplies, straightening chairs, wiping the floor, and occasionally glancing at a resident who seemed unsure or a nurse who looked too tired. He offered no words, just his quiet presence, a reminder that someone cared. It was a small comfort, but sometimes small comforts made all the difference. As the night wore on, Rohan found a quiet corner to rest for a few minutes. He leaned against the wall, closed his eyes briefly, and thought about the delicate balance of life, work, and hope. He thought about how the hospital never truly slept, how the unseen battles were fought every night, and how every person, no matter how small or unnoticed, had a role in keeping others alive. And as he stood again, pushing his cart down the silent corridors, Rohan whispered to himself, "One day, they will understand. Not today. Not tonight. But one day, the night janitor would no longer be invisible, and the lives he had quietly touched, guided, and protected would remember him for more than just cleaning floors." For now, he walked on, unseen but present, carrying hope in his hands, and saving lives in ways no one yet imagined. The hospital night was deep and still, yet the corridors were alive with quiet tension. Nurses walked quickly, their shoes making soft echoes on the shiny floors. Doctors whispered in corners, reviewing charts, and checking monitors, while patients slept or moved restlessly in their beds. The night shift demanded focus, patience, and calm. Rohan moved among them, pushing his cleaning cart. His uniform was simple and dark, his face calm. No one guessed that behind those tired eyes was a man who had performed countless surgeries that day and would again tomorrow. To everyone else, he was just another janitor, part of the background, part of the unnoticed routine. But tonight felt different. There was a sense of unease in the air, a ripple that went beyond tired staff and late hours. As Rohan moved past the emergency wing, he noticed the young nurse from earlier, Myra, frowning at a monitor. Her hands hovered uncertainly over the controls. Her face was pale under the harsh white lights. Rohan slowed. He could see that a patient in room 304 was showing irregular heart patterns. A minor change, but enough to cause concern. Most night staff were stretched thin, and small details like this could be missed if no one noticed. He approached quietly, pretending to mop a nearby section of the floor. Myra glanced at him but did not speak. He whispered under his breath, mostly to himself, "Stay calm. Watch carefully." Minutes passed, and the patient's condition became slightly unstable. Myra adjusted some settings but hesitated. Her movements were careful, but her uncertainty was clear. Rohan's heart tightened. He remembered his first nights as a young doctor, the fear of making a mistake that could cost a life. He considered stepping in, but he knew it was not time yet. Let her try. Let her learn. He stayed nearby, silent and steady, watching every movement. Then, a sudden alarm rang out. The patient's monitor flashed red, indicating a critical drop. Myra froze, her hands shaking slightly. Other nurses rushed in, and chaos seemed to grow. Rohan acted instantly, but still unseen. He moved closer, keeping to the shadows, guiding silently with his eyes and posture, letting the nurses and young resident respond correctly. The patient stabilized quickly under the combined efforts. Myra exhaled, relief flooding her face. She did not know why she felt stronger, more confident. All she remembered was the calm presence that had seemed to guide her. She glanced around but saw only the janitor, quietly mopping the floor again. Rohan smiled faintly. These moments mattered. He didn't need recognition. He just needed to know that someone had learned, someone had grown stronger, someone had survived. As he continued his rounds, he noticed other small issues: a chart left unchecked, a medication bottle placed incorrectly, a resident hesitating before making a decision. He corrected nothing aloud, offered no advice, but in subtle ways, his presence influenced the people around him. His calm aura gave others strength. His careful observation caught details that would have been missed if he were not there. Hours passed, and the hospital seemed to hold its breath. Every patient, every monitor, every footstep was part of a delicate balance that kept life flowing through the building. Rohan moved through it all with quiet grace, a shadow of calm in a sea of pressure. By now, some of the night staff had begun to notice something unusual. Myra, in particular, found herself glancing at him more often. There was a sense of steadiness about him, an unspoken knowledge that he carried. She could not explain it, but she felt safer knowing he was there, even if she didn't know why. At one point, Rohan stopped by the supply room. A young resident, Arjun, looked stressed as he tried to organize surgical tools for the next procedure. Rohan silently helped by adjusting a tray, straightening instruments, and moving a few misplaced items back into order. Arjun looked up, startled, and muttered a quiet, "Thank you," but saw only the janitor's gentle smile and nod. Rohan knew that gratitude wasn't necessary. Tonight, no one needed to know his identity. His purpose was simple: keep the hospital functioning, keep people safe, and quietly support the lives around him. Later, near the ICU, a patient began to show complications after surgery. The alarm sounded, and the nurses rushed in. Rohan's instincts were sharp. He recognized the subtle changes in vital signs, the patterns that indicated what needed to be done. He moved closer but stayed in the shadows, letting the staff react first. His heart raced, not with fear, but with focus. Every second mattered. Every small action could change the outcome. The situation resolved smoothly, and the patient stabilized again. Myra and Arjun exchanged looks of relief, both sensing something unusual had helped them through the crisis. But when they glanced at Rohan, he was already moving down the hall, cart in hand, cleaning floor tiles as though nothing had happened. By the time the first light of dawn began to creep through the hospital windows, Rohan had completed most of his rounds. His back ached, his legs were tired, but he felt a quiet satisfaction. Nights like these were not easy. They demanded patience, attention, and calm under pressure. But they were meaningful. As he prepared to leave, Myra approached him quietly. You seem to know what to do tonight," she said softly. Rohan looked at her, smiling faintly. "Experience helps," he replied, keeping his voice calm and simple. "You did very well too. Keep learning. Keep watching." She nodded, a mix of respect and curiosity in her eyes. Something about this janitor seemed different, special, but she could not put her finger on it. She only knew that the hospital night had been safer because he was there. Rohan pushed his cart toward the exit, feeling the weight of the night on his shoulders but also the quiet pride of having helped without recognition. No one knew his secret. No one would guess that the janitor who had silently guided them through critical moments was the same man who performed life-saving surgeries every day. And yet, that did not matter to Rohan. What mattered was the lives he touched, the confidence he inspired, and the hope he quietly carried through the night. Tonight had been another reminder, even in the shadows, one could make a difference. The hospital was quiet in the early morning hours. Sunlight had not yet reached the city streets, and inside, the staff were still deep in their routines. The night shift was nearly over, but tension hung in the air like a soft fog. Every patient, every monitor, every movement mattered. Rohan moved slowly down the hall, pushing his cleaning cart. His steps were steady, almost rhythmic. To anyone looking, he was just a janitor, finishing his final rounds before sunrise. Yet, there was something about him that night staff could not ignore. His calm presence, his sharp observation, the way he seemed to notice even the smallest detail, it was different from anyone they had seen before. Myra had stayed near the ICU since the critical patient from last night stabilized. She watched Rohan from across the hall. She could not explain why, but she felt an unusual sense of reassurance when he was nearby. Every time he walked past, her tension seemed to ease slightly. Even Arjun, the young resident, had begun to notice that something about the janitor was extraordinary. The hospital pager buzzed suddenly. A patient in another wing needed urgent attention. Nurses and doctors rushed forward, leaving their carts and charts behind. Rohan instinctively followed at a careful distance, observing without drawing attention to himself. In the patient's room, the situation was critical. The patient was an elderly woman recovering from surgery, her heart rate dropping unexpectedly. Nurses fumbled with the monitors, trying to understand the sudden change. A resident hesitated, unsure which action to take first. Rohan stepped slightly closer, though still in the shadows. He had seen this pattern many times before. His mind raced, recalling similar situations in his operating room experience. He recognized the subtle changes in the monitor, the tiny but dangerous shift in the patient's vitals. "Check the oxygen line," he whispered softly to himself, though the words carried only to him. He waited, observing the nurses carefully. One nurse adjusted the tubing, another checked the monitor settings, and the resident administered the right medication. Within moments, the patient stabilized. Myra and Arjun exchanged glances, relief washing over their faces. Both sensed that someone had guided them silently through the crisis, though they did not know who. They looked at Rohan, who was already moving away, pushing his cart as if nothing had happened. After the emergency, Rohan paused near the supply room. He straightened a few misplaced instruments and tidied the shelves. Arjun came in to collect some tools and noticed the orderliness of the supplies. "Wow, this is perfect," he said quietly, glancing around. Rohan smiled faintly. "Always make sure everything is ready," he replied simply, his voice calm. Arjun looked at him, curiosity sparking in his eyes. There was something unusual about this janitor, something beyond his quiet manners. Hours passed, and the hospital slowly shifted from night to early morning. Doctors prepared for day surgeries, nurses checked on patients, and the quiet energy of the night gave way to the busier day rhythm. Yet, even in the calm, Rohan remained attentive. His eyes caught small things others missed: a patient slightly restless, a tray out of place, a monitor showing minor fluctuation. Later, in a quiet corridor, Myra finally gathered the courage to speak. "Rohan, I don't know how to say this, but you seem to know everything. Every time something goes wrong, it's like you already know what to do." Rohan looked at her gently, his calm eyes reflecting quiet understanding. "Experience teaches you many things," he said softly. "You are doing well. You are learning. That is what matters." Myra nodded, though she still felt a mix of confusion and admiration. She had worked nights for years, seen many staff members handle emergencies, but no one had ever felt this quietly capable. As he continued his rounds, Rohan remembered why he had chosen this double life. Surgery was his skill, his profession, but the night janitor's role was his way of connecting to the human side of the hospital. By night, he could see the struggles of the staff, the moments of fear, doubt, and determination. By night, he could be a silent guide, a protector without needing praise. The hospital's corridors were nearly empty now. Sunlight began to filter through small windows, painting long stripes across the polished floors. Rohan paused for a moment, taking a deep breath. His legs were tired, his back ached, but his mind was alive with satisfaction. Nights like this were demanding, but they were also meaningful. Just as he pushed his cart near the ICU again, he heard soft whispers behind him. Myra and Arjun were talking quietly, clearly about him. He didn't stop, but he felt their eyes on his back. Something was changing. They were beginning to notice him, to see more than just a janitor in a dark uniform. Rohan smiled faintly to himself. It would not happen tonight. It would not happen tomorrow. But eventually, people would understand. They would realize that the quiet man who cleaned floors and moved through shadows was also someone who carried lives in his hands, someone who saved people in ways no one yet imagined. He continued his rounds, cleaning, observing, and guiding silently. Each step was careful, measured, deliberate. Each action was part of a larger purpose he carried quietly through the hospital. And though the night was nearly over, Rohan knew that his work, both visible and unseen, mattered more than recognition. By the time the first nurses of the day arrived, Rohan had completed his rounds. He placed the last trash bag outside the collection room, straightened the hallway, and checked the monitors one last time. Then, quietly, he slipped out of the hospital, blending with the city streets as if he had never been there. And yet, even as he disappeared into the morning light, Myra and Arjun could not stop thinking about him. Something about the night janitor had changed their understanding of the hospital. Something about him was remarkable, though they did not yet know the full story. Rohan walked home slowly, tired but satisfied. He had guided lives, protected the vulnerable, and reminded himself why he had chosen this path. Nights in the hospital were never easy, but they were where he felt most connected, most alive, and most useful. And one day, he thought, maybe people would finally see the truth. The hospital was waking up to a quiet morning. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, casting golden stripes across the polished floors. Day shift doctors and nurses were arriving, carrying their bags, greeting each other with soft smiles. But the night had left its mark: sleepy faces, tired eyes, and a lingering tension from emergencies that had stretched long into the hours before dawn. Rohan moved through the corridors, pushing his cleaning cart one last time before his own day duties began. He had finished nearly every corner of the hospital, yet he walked slowly, observing, listening, remembering. Even in the daylight, he was almost invisible. Staff were busy, patients were awake, and the rhythm of the day had begun, but he moved like a quiet shadow, careful not to disturb. Myra was already in the ICU, checking her patients, reviewing charts, and sipping a small cup of coffee. She looked up and noticed Rohan passing the hallway outside. Something about him caught her attention immediately. The way he moved, steady and purposeful, made her pause. She had seen him work nights before, but today, with sunlight revealing his calm face, she saw him differently. Arjun appeared beside her, holding a stack of patient charts. "Do you notice him too?" he whispered. It's strange, he seems to know everything, but he's just a janitor. Myra nodded, her eyes following Rohan as he paused near a patient's door, adjusting a small monitor slightly, almost without touching it. I don't understand, she said softly. I've worked nights for years, but I've never seen someone like this. Rohan pushed his cart onward, hearing their quiet conversation but not turning. He knew that curiosity would grow, and it was fine. He did not need recognition. Yet, he felt a small thrill inside. Finally, they were noticing something beyond his uniform, something beyond the night shift role they thought he held. Later, near the surgical wing, a commotion erupted. A patient had been brought in for an urgent procedure, and the surgical residents were scrambling to prepare. Rohan, still in his janitor uniform, walked close, watching carefully. He saw a small mistake in the preparation, a missing instrument that could slow down the surgery. Without making a sound, he adjusted the tray, placing the instrument in the correct position. A resident glanced at the tray, surprised. Wait, who did this? He asked, frowning. Everyone looked around but saw only Rohan quietly pushing his cart. He gave a faint nod and moved on, leaving questions behind him. Myra and Arjun exchanged uneasy glances. Something's not right, Myra whispered. No one else moves like that. No one else notices so many things. By midday, word began to spread quietly among the day shift staff. People who had been on nights mentioned the janitor who seemed to appear at the right place at the right time. No one could explain how he knew, how he acted, or why he had never revealed anything. Rumors grew slowly, mixed with admiration, curiosity, and disbelief. Rohan did not stop his work. He continued moving through the corridors, tidying, observing, and silently guiding when needed. A patient recovering from surgery had begun to show signs of distress. The monitor flashed, and a nurse froze. Rohan, from a few steps away, simply gestured with his hand, a small wave toward the right monitor setting. The nurse followed, stabilizing the patient. The moment passed, and no one even realized who had helped. Only a few remembered the calm figure in the corner, the silent presence that seemed to understand more than anyone else in the room. In the staff lounge, Myra and Arjun finally confronted each other. We need to know who he really is, Arjun said quietly. He can't just be a janitor. The things he does, it's impossible otherwise. Myra nodded, thoughtful. I agree. But how do you ask without offending him? We don't even know his story. Meanwhile, Rohan continued his rounds, unaware that attention was growing around him. He checked the floors, wiped a few surfaces, and adjusted supplies. Every movement was careful, deliberate, and full of purpose. He did not need approval. He did not need praise. The hospital's patients and staff were enough to motivate him. As afternoon arrived, Rohan paused near the windows, watching sunlight reflect off the polished floor. For a moment, he let himself relax, letting the quiet warmth fill him. Days like this reminded him why he had chosen this life, why he had chosen the double role. Surgery demanded skill, precision, and knowledge. Being a janitor demanded patience, observation, and empathy. Both roles shaped him, both roles allowed him to connect with people in ways others never could. Suddenly, Myra appeared beside him, almost hesitantly. Rohan, she said softly. Can I ask you something? Rohan looked at her calmly, his expression gentle. Of course, he replied. Are you really just a janitor? She asked, her voice quiet, almost trembling with curiosity. Rohan smiled faintly, a hint of sadness and pride in his eyes. "There is more to me than what you see," he said simply. "But it is not important for you to know. What matters is that the hospital is safe, and people are cared for." Myra stared at him, sensing a depth she could not yet understand. She wanted to ask more, but she realized it was not her place yet. Some truths revealed themselves only in time. Rohan nodded toward the corridor, giving her a small, encouraging look. Then he pushed his cart onward, blending once again into the daily rhythm of the hospital. People were beginning to notice him in small ways, whispers of admiration spreading quietly. Yet, he remained humble, silent, and dedicated, letting his actions speak louder than words ever could. By the end of the day, one thing was clear: Rohan was no ordinary janitor. The staff could sense it, feel it, and wonder about it. And though no one yet knew the full truth, a quiet respect had begun to grow, a respect for someone who quietly saved lives, guided others, and carried the heart of the hospital in his hands. Rohan finished his final tasks, smiled softly to himself, and left the hospital. Outside, the city buzzed with life, unaware of the quiet hero moving among them, unnoticed but deeply important. And slowly, very slowly, the secret of the night janitor was beginning to awaken in the minds of those who had seen him. It was late afternoon, and the hospital hummed with activity. Day shift doctors hurried through the corridors, nurses moved with quick efficiency, and patients' families quietly waited in chairs, anxious and hopeful. The rhythm of the hospital was relentless, each heartbeat echoing in monitors and each step marking another layer of care. Rohan moved through the hallways, pushing his cleaning cart as usual. His face was calm, his posture steady, but there was a sense of anticipation in the air that even he could feel. Something was different today. People were watching him more closely, whispering, noticing, wondering. Myra and Arjun had spoken about him to a few others, but no one had dared to ask directly about his secret. Suddenly, an urgent call came over the hospital intercom. Code Blue. Room 212. Immediate assistance required. The word struck through the building, alerting doctors and nurses instantly. Rohan's heart tightened. He recognized the urgency immediately. He pushed his cart faster, arriving at the door just as the staff did. Inside, a young patient lay on the bed, struggling to breathe, her monitors flashing red. The nurses were panicking slightly, moving quickly but without full direction. Arjun hesitated, unsure what to do first. Myra was already adjusting the ventilator settings, but her hands shook with fear. Rohan stepped forward. Not loudly, not commanding, just quietly positioning himself nearby. His eyes scanned the situation, noting every small detail: oxygen levels, medication dosages, monitor readings. With a calm gesture, he guided Arjun's hand toward the correct adjustment. Myra followed his subtle instructions, almost instinctively, and within moments, the patient stabilized. Everyone paused, catching their breath. The room was silent except for the rhythmic beeping of the monitors returning to normal. Myra looked at Rohan with wide eyes. How did you know what to do?" she whispered, astonished. Rohan smiled gently. "Experience," he said simply, his voice calm. "You all did well. I just helped guide." But the others were not convinced. Whispers spread among the staff in the room. "He's more than a janitor," one nurse said softly. "He knew exactly what to do. He saved her." At that moment, the hospital director, Dr. Murrah, arrived. He had heard the alarm and the commotion. As he entered the room, his eyes fell on Rohan. Something inside him clicked immediately, a quiet recognition. He had seen this man before in the operating room, performing surgeries with precision and skill. Could it be the same person? Rohan felt the tension but did not step back. He calmly pushed his cart aside, letting Dr. Murrah assess the situation. Myra and Arjun exchanged a glance and finally spoke. "Sir, he guided us through the emergency. He's the night janitor, but he knew everything," Myra said, her voice trembling with awe. Dr. Murrah's eyes widened. "Rohan?" he asked, stepping closer. Recognition sparked in his gaze. "You're the surgeon," Rohan nodded quietly. "Yes, sir. I also work nights as a janitor. It helps me understand the hospital differently. I can watch, guide, and support the staff in ways that don't always require the operating room." The room was silent. Staff members stared, some in disbelief, some in admiration. No one had ever imagined that the quiet man who moved through the hospital corridors, unnoticed by most, was also one of its most skilled surgeons. Dr. Murrah approached Rohan and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You've saved lives in ways we didn't even realize. You've been both invisible and indispensable," he said, his voice firm but full of respect. Myra stepped forward. I had no idea. I thought you were just a janitor. But you guided us tonight. You saved her life." Rohan looked at her with gentle eyes. "I only wanted to help. The hospital needs all of us working together, in every way we can." Word of Rohan's secret spread quickly through the hospital. Staff members were stunned, some speechless, others inspired. They had seen his dedication, his calm presence, his quiet guidance, and now they understood why. He was not just a janitor, he was a guardian, a mentor, a healer in every sense of the word. By evening, the hospital staff gathered in a small lounge. People shared stories of how Rohan had subtly guided them, helped them avoid mistakes, and saved lives without taking credit. Myra and Arjun recounted the emergencies they had faced that night, explaining how his silent instructions had made all the difference. Rohan stood quietly, letting them speak, accepting their gratitude without pride. He had never worked for recognition. His goal had always been simple: to care, to guide, and to protect. Dr. Murrah finally spoke. "From now on, we need to recognize your work properly. You have a rare gift, Rohan. Not just in surgery, but in leadership, patience, and understanding." Rohan shook his head gently. "I am honored, sir. But my work is not for recognition. It is for the patients and the staff. That is enough for me." Myra smiled, inspired. "Even if you don't want recognition, you deserve it. You've changed the way we see our work, the way we see teamwork, and the way we see care." Rohan looked around the room, feeling a quiet warmth in his chest. The secret he had carried for so long was finally understood, not for fame, not for praise, but because it mattered to those whose lives he touched every day. As the sun set, casting soft orange light through the hospital windows, Rohan pushed his cart one last time and walked toward the exit. Staff members nodded, smiled, and quietly thanked him. He didn't need applause. The lives saved, the lessons shared, and the silent guidance he had provided were enough. And as he stepped out into the evening air, Rohan knew that, at last, the night janitor was no longer invisible, not to those who truly mattered. The hospital was quieter than usual that night. Most patients were resting peacefully, and only the occasional beep of a monitor or a soft footstep echoed through the long corridors. Rohan pushed his cleaning cart slowly, taking care not to disturb anyone. His back ached, and his legs were tired, but he moved with his usual calm purpose. Tonight felt different. There was a tension in the air, subtle but present. Something told him that this night would demand more than cleaning floors or organizing supplies. Something told him that lives would rely on him in ways he could not ignore. As he passed the ICU, he noticed a young boy struggling to breathe. The child had been admitted after a serious accident, and his condition had been stable for the past few hours. But now, the monitors showed irregular heart patterns. A nurse was at his side, adjusting oxygen and checking vitals, but her hands trembled slightly. Rohan moved closer, staying just at the edge of the room. His eyes scanned the situation quickly, noticing small errors in the setup: a slightly twisted oxygen tube, a misplaced sensor, a monitor not adjusted correctly. Without stepping forward, he whispered instructions under his breath, almost like a soft reminder to himself. The nurse adjusted the equipment as Rohan had silently suggested. Within moments, the boy's vitals began to stabilize. Myra and Arjun, who had been nearby, watched in awe. They had seen him guide situations before, but this felt more urgent, more critical. Who is he really? Myra whispered to Arjun, her voice trembling. He saved him, again. And he's just a janitor. Arjun shook his head slowly. I don't know, but it feels like he sees everything. He knows what to do before anyone else does. Rohan pushed his cart away, continuing his rounds, but his mind remained alert. He knew there would be more challenges tonight. There always were. The hospital was a place of life and death, and he had chosen to carry part of that responsibility quietly, without recognition, without praise. Later, near the surgical wing, an older patient had a sudden complication after a routine procedure. The alarm sounded, and the night staff rushed in, tense and uncertain. Rohan was already there, observing, noticing small mistakes before they became dangerous. He moved silently, pointing subtly, adjusting trays and equipment just enough to guide the staff without taking control. The patient stabilized, and the staff let out quiet sighs of relief. Myra and Arjun looked at Rohan, realizing again how much they relied on his unseen presence. They had begun to understand that the night janitor was not ordinary, he was extraordinary in ways they had never imagined. But the night had one more test. A sudden emergency call came from the pediatric wing. A child had developed a high fever and was in danger of rapid dehydration. Nurses and residents hurried, but confusion and fatigue slowed them down. Rohan's heart tightened. This was critical. He moved quickly but silently, directing attention where it was needed. Myra and Arjun followed his subtle cues, adjusting fluids, checking vitals, and calming the child with gentle words. The monitors began to stabilize, and the child's breathing slowed to a normal rhythm. Myra looked at him, eyes wide. You are everywhere tonight," she said softly. "How do you do it?" Rohan smiled gently. "I only notice what others might miss. I am still learning, just like you all are." His voice was calm, but the depth of his experience was clear. By now, more staff members had begun to gather quietly, watching him. They saw how he guided, how he noticed, how he quietly supported without stepping into the spotlight. A respect had grown in them, a quiet admiration for the man who had always been there, always helping, always saving lives without anyone fully understanding his presence. Near the end of his rounds, Rohan paused by the hospital garden. The night was calm, and the cool air filled his lungs. He looked at the empty benches and the soft glow of the outdoor lights. It was moments like these, away from alarms and monitors, that reminded him why he did this work. It was not for fame or recognition. It was for life, for care, for the quiet knowledge that he could make a difference in ways no one would ever fully see. Myra approached him quietly. "Rohan, why do you do this?" she asked softly. "Why help like this if no one knows?" Rohan looked at her gently, a small smile on his lips. "Because it matters," he said simply. "Every life matters. Every choice matters. And if I can make even one life safer, then it is enough." Arjun nodded, inspired. "We will remember this, all of it. And we will try to be better because of you." Rohan smiled faintly and nodded. He did not need applause, praise, or thanks. The hospital itself, the people in it, and the lives he touched were enough. As the night ended and the first light of dawn appeared, Rohan completed his final rounds. He pushed his cart out quietly, blending into the early morning streets. The city awoke around him, unaware of the quiet hero moving among them, but inside the hospital, the impact of his night work was clear. Staff were safer, patients were protected, and the lessons he silently shared would last far longer than anyone realized. And though no one fully knew his secret yet, Rohan felt a quiet pride. Nights like these tested him, challenged him, and reminded him of the value of patience, observation, and care. He was more than a janitor, more than a surgeon. He was a guardian of lives, moving silently through the shadows, saving the unseen, and touching hearts without ever needing to be seen. And tonight had proven once again that even in silence, one person could make all the difference. The hospital was bathed in warm morning light. Nurses moved through the corridors, carrying charts and offering quiet smiles to waking patients. Doctors walked briskly, discussing schedules and cases. But there was a sense of calm, a feeling that the night's challenges had been survived, and the hospital was stronger because of it. Rohan pushed his cleaning cart slowly, taking his time. The night was over, but its lessons lingered. Staff members who had witnessed his quiet guidance now looked at him differently. Respect, admiration, and curiosity followed him through the hallways. He felt it, but he moved as always with calm focus, never seeking praise. Myra and Arjun were already in the staff lounge, waiting for him. They had spoken to Dr. Murrah, and the director had agreed it was time to formally acknowledge Rohan's contributions. The hospital had learned much from his quiet dedication, but it was time for the truth to be recognized. "Rohan," Myra began, her voice steady but full of emotion, we all know now. You're not just the night janitor. You're one of the finest surgeons this hospital has ever seen." Rohan paused, smiling faintly. "I don't need recognition," he said softly. "I only care that people are safe, and that the hospital runs well." Arjun stepped forward, holding a small folder. "We all want to show our appreciation. This is from the staff and administration. It's not just a certificate, it's a recognition of everything you've done for us, for the patients, and for the hospital." Rohan shook his head gently. "I appreciate it," he said, "but my work is for others, not for awards or thanks." Myra smiled, understanding the humility in his words. "We know," she said. "But some things need to be acknowledged. Not for you, but so we remember what dedication truly looks like. You've inspired all of us." Rohan looked around at the staff gathered in the lounge. Faces full of admiration and gratitude met him. Nurses, residents, and even senior doctors had come to see him. Some had watched his work from the shadows for months, others had only recently noticed the quiet influence he had on the hospital's safety and efficiency. For a moment, Rohan felt a warmth he had not experienced in a long time. He was used to being unseen, unnoticed, but now, he realized the impact he had made was undeniable. His patience, his skill, his quiet guidance, all of it had mattered far more than he had imagined. Dr. Murrah stepped forward. Rohan, we want to formally acknowledge you not just as a surgeon, but as a mentor, a guide, and a guardian for this hospital. Your quiet presence has saved countless lives and inspired everyone here. Today, we honor that. Rohan looked at him with gentle eyes. Thank you, sir, he said simply. I only did what I could. The staff, the nurses, the residents, they all worked hard too. I only guided when it was needed. Myra moved closer. Rohan, you've changed the way we see our work. You've taught us that attention to detail, calmness under pressure, and quiet guidance can make all the difference. We'll never forget tonight, or any night you've been here. Arjun nodded. You're a hero in ways no one else could be. Not because of fame or medals, but because of what you do quietly, patiently, and always for others. Rohan smiled, feeling a quiet satisfaction. Recognition was not his goal, but seeing the staff understand his intentions, seeing them inspired and confident, was more meaningful than anything else. He realized that his work both as a surgeon and as a night janitor was now a part of the hospital's heart. Later, as he moved through the corridors for his final rounds, staff members nodded, smiled, and quietly thanked him. Patients' families noticed his calm presence and felt reassured, even if they did not know his full story. Rohan's humility, skill, and quiet dedication had left an imprint on everyone around him. As he pushed his cart toward the exit, Myra walked alongside him. Rohan, she said softly, I hope you know, you've changed this hospital. And you've changed us. Thank you for everything. Rohan nodded gently. It is not about thanks, he said. It is about care. Every life matters. Every choice matters. And if I can help even a little, then it is enough. Myra smiled, understanding perfectly. Then maybe it is time we all pay attention to the little things, the quiet actions, and the people who guide us without asking for recognition. You've taught us that lesson too. Rohan paused at the hospital door, looking back one last time. The building that had been both his workplace and his secret stage now felt more like a home than ever. He had walked its halls unseen for years, saving lives quietly, guiding others, and inspiring without words. And now, even though recognition was not his goal, the hospital understood the truth. He stepped outside into the warm morning air. The city was awake, buzzing with life, unaware of the quiet hero who had walked among them. Yet inside, the staff carried a new respect and understanding, a respect born from observation, inspiration, and gratitude. Rohan took a deep breath, feeling the cool breeze on his face. Nights would still be long, emergencies would still happen, and challenges would still arise. But he knew now that his dedication, quiet skill, and patient guidance would always matter, both to the patients he saved and to the staff he silently guided. And as he walked away from the hospital, pushing his empty cart through the city streets, Rohan smiled. He had lived in the shadows for years, unseen but present. Now, he was understood not for glory, not for fame, but for what truly mattered: care, skill, and the quiet courage to make a difference every single day. The night janitor had finally been recognized. And the hospital, its staff, and its patients would never forget him.